Yeah, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoy Bansko. I know you had a long way to come here and you have great weather outside, but you're sitting here with me, and I thank you for that. And without any further ado, I want to jump into that. My topic that I have here is co-working, co-living community, how to live, or new ways to live together in times of remote work. And I think pretty much it ties in to what we had already. So if you had been here yesterday and you listened to a couple of talks, there will be a couple of elements that you know already. But yeah, I do have my personal experiences and my way to present them, and I'm looking forward to do it right now. Let's jump right into it here. Building versus exploring. With building, I mean pretty much everything that you can build up over the course of your life. So this can be more immaterial things such as a circle of friends, a long-term relationship, or family. It can be more material things such as a career, a house, or a flash 52-inch 8K TV in your bedroom. Exploring, I mean essentially discovering the world. Traveling, going to a foreign culture, maybe staying even in a foreign country, in a foreign culture, broadening your own horizon, encountering different people with different worldviews, and becoming potentially a slightly better and more humble human being. Now, when we're building too much, it can create a kind of like feeling of inner emptiness and being stuck. Not only that you own a lot of things, but also these things own you at some point, and you're not happy with all of them in the end. When exploring too much, it can create this feeling of instability and kind of like also erratic mindset. You're hitting yet another country on your list. The minute you feel uneasy, you want to take off and want to go to the next, hopefully perfect place. Can get this kind of like instability. Maybe some of you know that. Going with that, something about me. Oh, that's good that this one is in here. But okay, then let's have the most unimportant part quickly first, and then we go further ahead. As Stefan was already saying, I'm from Germany originally. I used to live in 10 different countries, and I speak 6 different languages fluently, one better than the other one. I keep it with one language here, really, okay? I do work remote since 2017 and also live location independently. Actually, my first job that I had, my first remote job was in 2013. This was this kind of like recruiting for the student job that I had back then. But you can imagine there wasn't, Wi-Fi in every angle and also cafes to work from, especially in Germany. Not a thing, so I always had to work from home. And yeah, I used to have a pop-up co-living project in Portugal. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later during my presentation. And yeah, I organized through the years several workations for digital nomads. And I'm also, yeah, as Stefano said, I'm co-founder of the Thriving Nomads, but this project is dormant at the moment, but just wanted to put here, yeah. Let's have a look into it. Well, what are you going to do here, or what you're going to get here? You can still decide if you want to have that or not. I give you an introduction right now, so that we're going to be aligned, that we're speaking about the same things. I really want to get you a little bit into my, stream of thoughts. Quick definitions that we're just talking about the same thing. Will be some basic stuff, but especially for beginners, that might be nice. Why do we care? Why does it all matter to us? Suggestions for creating stronger and more resilient communities. And then at the end, let's have a little bit of fun. Let's have some, future-oriented ideas of living together. And with that, yeah, I was, forget about the slides for a second. Actually, I was thinking about to sit down there in the front, but I think it's just better when I stay here, and also that's why I have my little paper here. I had a beginning, when I started this presentation, I had a question in mind. I was kind of like, why is community, the term community, so important to us? Why do people rave so much about it? What's the thing about it, especially in the realm of remote working and location independence? And when I think about it, it was like back in the good old days. Community was something exclusively local, first of all. So imagine that still in the beginning of the 19th century, so about 200 years ago from now, people, simply used to live all the life, pretty much in a district where they were born into. And the simple reason were like very, limited transportation opportunities and simply a very predominant agrarian lifestyle. So people simply stayed in the community that they were born into. Nowadays, we would also call that communities of fate. Of fate, nicht of fake, okay? Communities of fake is what we have nowadays. So, and if there was any exception from that, there was either very good reason or simply out of necessity. So, for example, there was war deployment or kind of like, relocating to another region out of ecological reasons, I would say. But other than that, I mean, that was like a, once in a lifetime event that people had, and which is in total contrast to nowadays modern traveling, really. So that said, community was simply there, like the air to breathe, really, which has changed nowadays completely. The mobility of the average person in the Western world, at least, has expanded tremendously. So we do have cars, we do have trains, airplanes. You might even think of some individuals that have a private rocket to go to universe, right? And cities are also built in a way that it's very easy to leave and to get somewhere else. In fact, they're even incentivized to do so. Extended families nowadays, I think it's rather an exception, and it's more to be found in the countryside. Friends and families, they're more, living, I would say, half across the nation or something, even half across the globe. We do nowadays live in nuclear families, if at all. And yeah, the average person, like we tend to live more in big cities, in whatever big buildings. And in a hall, we might, fleetingly greet our neighbors. And in the metro, we have this kind of like strained silence. And now, in order to find community, we need to either be part of, I don't know, a particular organization, or we need to have a certain hobby. We're also talking about social bubbles. Online marketers also, they always emphasize that, you have to create your own community in order to give people the feeling to belong. And in the spearhead of all of that, it turned out, in the last 10, 15 years to have this group of location-independent people that put that whole thing on another level, really. So, I mean, I don't have to explain to anyone to you that you can easily take your work to Bangkok or to Lisbon or to Bansko. And so with that background, with that perspective, I'd like to frame my presentation here, and I would like to give you some quick insights about some basic concepts. It might be for some people of you a no-brainer. This interactive part we leave it out because I don't have enough time. We go to the Q&A. First of all, what does co-working mean? I mean, it might be really like a no-brainer for you, but think about it for a second. How would you explain co-working to someone who has never heard of that concept? Your grandma, okay? I don't leave you alone. I did the work for you here. So a co-working is basically a shared office where mostly individuals are working on their own projects without being exposed to the traditional office constraints. So you don't have to wear anything uptight or uncomfortable, which you simply don't like. One does not have to deal with any infrastructure. It is provided. Well, you have hopefully a comfy chair, you get a desk, internet is provided, you name it. And the idea is to create a better and more productive working environment and the exchange with the other people participating. So instead of that, you sit at home in your apartment, you don't get motivated, and you don't get things done. The idea is that because everybody else is working there, you get to work there as well. I know that's not true for everybody. I know people are, sometimes also the opposite, when they're like, I'm productive at home, but in the co-working space, I don't get anything done. I know that. Further, it's not about just only saving costs, but it's also belonging to a community. That's the magical word here. And if someone wants to be a counter and count every time that I say community, then please be my guest here. Ding, yeah. And also co-working spaces can be very different from each other. So they can be also sometimes niche-y in a way that if you want to start a co-working nowadays, then it's not enough that you just put a table and a chair and provide some internet. You have to have a very clear and distinct picture of your audience and of your concept. Check, co-working. Let's go to co-living, just to have that sort as well. So this is in a temporary situation or living situation of a group of location-independent people with the intention to exchange, to learn from each other, to grow together, that is belonging to a community. Ding, next one. So it is resource efficient, and it also provides access to assets which you normally would not have on your own. So for example, a big kitchen, because you share with other people, can be swimming pool, gym room, some other things that you maybe know yourself as well. And oftentimes also a co-living space is equipped with a co-working, which makes pretty much sense. Maybe you also have some other services such as yoga classes or language exchange or whatever. And yeah, co-livings are basically made for individuals, but it can be also good for small teams or startups that want to work together physically for a while when otherwise they don't actually. And I mean, this depends a little bit, I would say, on the setting of the co-living, maybe also the their policy, the location, so on. Anyway, quickly, the advantages of co-living so that you just have them together. For, I don't know who has never done co-living, I want to, give you the advantages. First of all, there's no deposit needed, no long-term contracts, and no invoices to pay. You simply don't have to bother about all this boring stuff. Next is that all the necessary infrastructure is provided. Same as for the co-working, so you don't have to walk to IKEA and choose your bed. It's all there, right? And you also you have immediately this bunch of like-minded people that are happy to connect and to network, which is then a sometimes curated community that depends a little bit on the co-living. Sometimes they have a community manager on site, which makes sense from a certain size and depending again on their policy. Okay, great. We have this all done. Now, why is that all important for us? Why do we care? Why do we have so many talks about it, including mine here? And I want to go into two things here. One is achieving more in community, and the other one is social isolation in the modern world. Achieving more in community, so you have access to facilities and things that otherwise you would not have, as I was mentioning already. It can be a swimming pool, can be a gym room, can be a community Lamborghini. I would go definitely, I mean, I don't want to go for lower than that, right? Yeah, then what is very important, I think, is that you meet more people with special skill sets and knowledge, which you can easily harness. And I think this is very important to point, because from a certain amount of people, from a certain size of group, you simply have a variety of people, people that have different skill sets, different knowledge, and different experience than you have. And very often they're happy to talk about it, to share it, and that can be a great booster for yourself and for your personal life, and for your professional life as well. Better economical opportunities. I observed it quite a bunch of times that two co-livers, they start to support each other, for example, giving feedback about their project, about their work, whatever they do. Sometimes one person can get another person even a job or can get a significant hint to land a new one, really. Sometimes it's just about you overhear a conversation of two co-livers that gets you into something you would have never gotten into that yourself. And yeah, you also stay in the loop of what's going on in the scene. So many people that are staying in a co-living, oftentimes they come from previous co-living spaces or from, like digital nomad hotspots, I would say. They talk about it and can be informative, can be inspiring, and it simply, keeps you up in the loop of what's going on in the simple, little, small nomad world here. And last but not least, and that gets me right into my next point that I was mentioning before, the alleviation of social isolation. So the simple fact that you can walk out of your room and you find someone to talk to can make a significant difference. Social isolation in the modern world. This is the second point that I want to walk into here. First of all, why is social isolation an issue? Well, I want to dive a little bit into that, but not too far. And that's why I keep it quite simple, saying that social isolation and loneliness is a widespread phenomenon in the Western world, and it is simply bad for you, okay? I mean, just to be clear about it, we could go, I could come up with tons of studies that I was going through and reading a little bit. And you have the social isolation, and you have loneliness, and you have being alone, and you have to, make a note here that all of these terms, they have a slight but very important difference. Whereas social isolation is a phenomenon, loneliness is a feeling, and being alone is simply a state. Yeah. Anyway, I would get too far here with my presentation. Simply, what has been proven already is that it raises the risk of suffering heart diseases and stroke, and is pretty much as dangerous as smoking and obesity, and can lead to premature death. I can also show you this picture here. You pretty much can see that, I mean, not so many nice things that you probably don't want to be caught up with, really, yeah? I know you might be like, yeah, I mean, maybe for older people, kind of like, that are, whose partner and friends died already, and maybe if they have some family, then they live some distance away, but it's actually not the case. As we see here in the next survey, BBC Radio 4 had 55,000 participants in 2018, and it turns out that the young people, they report more often loneliness than the older people, actually. By the way, that was 2018. I wouldn't be surprised if now, after the pandemic, that ratio there would be significantly higher with the young people, actually. I also have another statistics here that shows a little bit more detail by age group. Again, I don't know if you can see it from the back. Now it's your fault when you sit all the way in the back. It says often, always, and some of the time you can see that the 60 to 24 years old one, they are reporting more often the feeling of loneliness than any other age group. And again, you can go into many details. You can go into gender, you can go into age group, you can marital status, living alone versus living together, married, not married, and all these, details, they make a significant difference. But again, I'm not going to go too far into that. What's more important, or what's probably more interesting for us here, is this one here. This is from the Buffer remote work, or state of remote work from last year. It's pretty interesting. When you look into that, they have a lot of really cool things about our bubble here. And when you see the 15% here, that's where I put the arrow here, is that loneliness is the second biggest struggle that we remote workers are dealing with. And the biggest one here, what you can see, 21%, I don't know if you can read it in the back, I do it for you. I stay home too often because I don't have a reason to leave. And I was like, actually, when you combine those two, for me, there is a connection, maybe because you feel lonely because you stay too often at home and don't have a reason to leave. I don't want to say there's 36% right now, whatever, but I would say there's a connection to that. So now that we learned, okay, social isolation is simply bad, we have learned that social support is simply important for your happiness or for our happiness and health, and it's also instrumental to share ability, or for our ability to share information, to learn from each other, and to seize economical opportunities. I don't know, I was also looking into these studies, maybe you heard of them, where a bunch of scientists followed students for decades to find out what's the one thing that makes people most happy in their life. And after all these decades, they found out, it's deep relationships and resilient and strong networks. Happy, congratulations for finding that out after all the decades. Isn't it, right? And nowadays, what's the reality anyway? We live in big cities with a lot of traffic and hardly know each other, and the neighbors from next door, we don't know. This is what many people have nowadays. And I took this picture myself from Lisbon. Yeah? Every city has it's not so beautiful parts as well. So now I want to come up and say, okay, so what's the solution? How can we create stronger and more resilient communities after we saw all the misery here? And my suggestion is, and maybe you had it already before, and my good friend Gonzalo was already mentioning this also here when he had his talk yesterday, co-working and co-living in rural areas. And why? So I want to give you the advantages from the rural co-working and co-living. The first one, and I'm talking about my own experience here because I used to have a kind of pop-up co-living in Portugal, not in Lisbon, not in Porto. It was really in the countryside, and it was in 2017, again, pre-pandemic. Less distraction for people around, simply because you can't just go out and do whatever things. You have to automatically concentrate more on the people that are there, and automatically you make more and deeper connection. It's just what happens there, right? Next is that it also attracts rather people who are more into community. I didn't want that to go into his head anyway. Obviously, if someone is looking for a party and for a big city life and whatever, not cultural life, they wouldn't go for maybe such a place. So people who go to these places, they're already more prone for community and connecting with people. People stay longer. I don't have any hard data at my hand, but to my best experience, to everything what I've seen and had with my own co-living also, that people in such settings, they tend to stay longer, extended periods of time. And also, it is more economical in terms of pricing, which I think is averagely speaking true. There are also some exceptions there that I could mention. But of course, it makes sense when you buy whatever, you have a project in the countryside and you would put that same project, the same unit into a whatever urban or city environment, that would cost more and then you have to charge more, okay? And then, that's a little anecdote, what's the most important item of a co-living? And it's not your comfy bed and it's not your fast internet or whatever, which is all important, right? But the most important item really in a co-living is the dining table. Yeah? This is where the magic happens. The ding community, okay? Cool. Now, I would like to give you some examples of famous rural co-working and co-living examples. I have to add that they're all from Europe right now because I'm not too knowledgeable about other places in the world, really. Just to give you maybe some inspiration, because maybe some of you have never looked into that, really. I start with my home country, Coconut in Germany, which is just an hour outside of Berlin. And they're really one of the first movers on the map. So in 2014, I remember when they had their presentation going on in Berlin, I was there and was looking at that. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. There's Chateau Coliving in France. Yes, you can co-live in a big fat castle, really, which is actually run by a Bulgarian girl. I don't know if Katya is here in the audience, but would be an honor. We have Swiss Escape in Switzerland. Yes, also people go to Switzerland. Obviously, you need to have the certain cash for that. When we go slightly more Eastern Europe, then we are having Port's Home in Hungary, which is at the Balaton Lake. And last but not least, I would say the most influential and important project in that kind is Sende in Spain, which is a place where you have to sign up month, maybe even a year in advance if you want to get a room there. I was there for a month. I took this picture here as well. And I mean, unless you have a connection to the manager, you have quite a waiting list there, really. It is very popular. Great. I want to, dive into some, future ideas of, setups, communities, how will we live together? Because the dream of, location independence is no longer a dream anymore. It's, we have a reality here right now. And I mean, if I get a picture from you, I mean, how many of you work remote and take advantage of this by living in a place of their choice? What about the rest here? Okay, so I want to give you some ideas, and I'm more than happy to debate afterwards about further ideas or further crazy things, So one thing that I came up with was this tiny house style. Maybe some of you heard of that. That can be in a rural area, but could be also in an urban area. Maybe interesting in terms of finances. The next thing that I was thinking of, and that's kind of like personal vision that I have, this global village of international people that work on the craziest projects, great ideas that you can exchange there, like this kind of breeding cells for the rest of the world, really. And then when we take it a bit further out there, I was, this like smart, green, sustainable eco-architecture city. I think it goes into this, like, it's called solar punk, I'm not quite sure, but why not, right? I just give you some inspirations here for my last slides that I have. Maybe something like this. There's always a lot of green involved. Maybe something like this one here. I mean, why not, right? I mean, we should dream, really, right? And also this one here, for example. Someone was already considering the climate change here. So let me get to the very beginning here when we were talking about building versus exploring. Whereas most people are rather on that side here, let's say in a normal world, and they build too much and they might get, have this feeling of inner emptiness and being stuck. We might be more on the other side of the exploring part, and we should maybe have a heads up of not becoming too erratic and unstable and everything, but instead build some beautiful things maybe as well. That's what I wanted to tell you today. Thank you so much for the attention. If you want to connect with me, you can either do it on LinkedIn or, I mean, I'm just here, so just talk to me. And thank you so much.